everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Ben Hellerstein, and I'm the State Director for the Environment Massachusetts Research and Policy Center. We are a statewide, citizen-supported environmental advocacy organization working to protect clean air, clean water, and open space. And I just wanted to start off today by thanking the New Bedford Economic Development Council and the New Bedford Wind Energy Center, as well as Mayor Jon Mitchell and his staff for hosting us here in New Bedford today. So we're here today to release Wind Power to Spare, a new report looking at the potential for offshore wind energy in Massachusetts and other states throughout the Atlantic coast. And our message today is clear. At a time when we're increasingly seeing the impacts of our dependence on dirty energy, it's time to look to alternatives. And the good news is that offshore wind is ready to meet a growing portion of our energy needs and power our state many times over. So we've known for a long time that our dependence on dirty energy is harmful to our health, it's polluting our air and our water, and it's changing our climate in dangerous ways. And just in the last few weeks, I think that's really been brought home for us. We've seen a series of extreme storms that have battered our coastal communities and caused record high tides and flooding. And in many ways, this is just a taste of what's to come. Scientists predict that sea levels could rise by 7 to 10 feet in the Boston area by the end of the century, unless we take action today to dramatically shift away from fossil fuels to clean and renewable energy. A future powered by 100% renewable energy is within reach, and Massachusetts has tremendous renewable energy resources to help us achieve that future. And as our report today shows, Massachusetts has enormous offshore wind resources, actually more than any other state in the country. Offshore wind could provide more than 19 times as much electricity as the entire state of Massachusetts consumes every year. And even if we were to electrify all of our heating and all of our transportation in the state, which scientists say is what we need to do to get to an entirely renewable energy system, even with all that additional demand, offshore wind could still power the state 8 times over. So it's not really a question of can we do offshore wind or will it happen? It's a question of how soon will it happen. And I'm pleased to say that offshore wind is already moving ahead in Massachusetts. Our state is committed to installing 1,600 megawatts of offshore wind in the next decade. And we have representatives from the 3 companies right now that are working to develop the first portion of that commitment. And we can do so much more beyond that. Actually, since Massachusetts' commitment to offshore wind was announced, New Jersey and New York have announced larger commitments. I know that if I know anything, it's that Massachusetts doesn't like to be second to New York in anything. So I think it's time for our state leaders to look at our existing commitment and consider expanding it. So to conclude, we have tremendous offshore wind energy potential here in Massachusetts. And we have the technology and the smarts to turn that resource into limitless, clean, renewable energy. So what are we waiting for? So with that, I'll hand it off to Mayor Jon Mitchell of New Bedford.
All right, thanks, Ben. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming out today, and thanks in particular for the indoor setting for this conference. I know it's as tempting as it is to go hold something like this out at the terminal. This was not the day. So thanks for your clear vision in that way. I really want to thank Ben and Environment Massachusetts for their leadership on renewables generally, and in particular in the area of offshore wind. You guys have been great partners along the way as New Bedford has attempted to position itself as a national leader in renewables, and especially in offshore wind. As you know, as we've touted for very long, we have not just styled ourselves as a green city, but we've embraced it programmatically for lots of reasons. We believe that embracing renewables creates jobs, it cleans the environment, and it can save taxpayer dollars, and that's why we've become a leader in so many facets of the green economy. According to the Wall Street Journal, and you guys, many of you can fill in the rest of the sentence, New Bedford has been, and at least in the last few years, #1 per capita in the United States in installed municipal solar capacity. We have more electric cars than any community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have the 3rd largest residential electricity aggregation program in the United States, as we understand it. We've doubled recycling by completely redoing the way that we collect trash in the city. I mean, the list goes on. 10,000 streetlights, retrofitting all sorts of municipal buildings, including this one with renewable energy technology. And then there's offshore wind. When I got into office, we made a point working with our partners at the EDC, Tony, Derek, formerly Matt, to really be out on the leading edge of this new industry that we were convinced could become a big part of Greater New Bedford's economic base going forward, and to really and to help us do our part to mitigate the effects of climate change, and it's all happening. And so, we are very encouraged by that. There has been tremendous work, including by our state partners and by our federal partners along the way. It continues across gubernatorial and even presidential administrations, and we do it because we have to. We do it because of the opportunity, but we also do it because of the need to leave the world a better place for our children and our grandchildren. So today's report is timely, and one might be tempted to say, well, to look at this report and say, well, haven't we heard all this before? It's a rationale for offshore wind, and I really want to make clear it is very useful, Ben, because it is as the industry becomes more and more real to people, more and more visible, as it will in the next few years, people need to understand why. And something as an elected official, I've grown to appreciate that sometimes you need to repeat yourself and you need to update what you've said with new evidence, and that's what this is. And the big trend in offshore wind now is greater efficiency, especially the efficiency that comes with the scaling up of turbines. When we were talking, we started out a few years ago, we're focusing primarily on the Cape Wind project and the possibility of others. We were looking at 3.6 megawatt turbines, which had been the workhorse turbine in Northern Europe. And nowadays the standard has become 6 and is about to become 8 and might become 10 megawatts sometime in the not too distant future. These are massive machines that connect, that enable very large blades and larger blades still in the foreseeable future to generate enough electricity to power major cities, and that's what really we're at, especially in the northeastern United States. And the reason why this is taking off in the Northeast is not just because of the wind conditions, not just because of the shallow water, but also because of the major population centers up and down the East Coast. It just makes it's an indigenous source of electricity right by where people live, and that's when you really get right down to it. That's what's so important about it. So it's all very important. The other, and it's important to remind everybody that things are getting cheaper, and that there will be pushback at times when people start seeing windmills and ask why. They'll say, well, doesn't this raise my electricity bill? And we can hold up reports like this and say, not so much. It's getting much, much better, as folks in Germany and Denmark are beginning to learn now. The second overall point that I want to make is that, and Ben alluded to it, that Massachusetts is in competition now, and that means therefore New Bedford is in competition with ports and other states. New Jersey and New York have jumped in this industry and the support of this industry with both feet. And in the years ahead, it is as much as we've worked very hard through the Wind Energy Center, which is now headed up by Paul Vigen, and through other means to position New Bedford as a leader, and we believe that we are now. We cannot rest on our laurels. There will be others that will seek to support the industry and to grab, frankly, as many jobs as they possibly can. So from New Bedford's standpoint, we need to continue to aggressively assert ourselves, to plan well, to work together, to facilitate the settlement of the industry here in the Port of New Bedford, which is the most suitable place on the East Coast to do operations and maintenance and other activities that support offshore energy production. But it's important. We have to keep this up. We have to sustain the effort over a long period of time. The last thing I want to say is, as the industry starts to develop here, it will be really, really important for the industry to work closely and cooperatively with the commercial fishing industry. This is not Northern Europe. The commercial fishing industry on the east coast of the United States, and particularly that which is connected to New Bedford, is very, very different than anything they have in Northern Europe. And so it took some 20 years and counting for the industry, for the offshore wind industry, and to build and maintain a good relationship with the fishing industry there. We don't want for that to happen here. And it is harder here to do that because the industry here is much larger, much more complex, much more multifaceted, much healthier, and much more sustainable. So, this is the place. New Bedford will be the place. It will be the epicenter where these two industries interact. And it's very important that we have everybody at the table listening to one another so that the offshore wind industry can get it right here. And that we don't have all sorts of consternation and public controversy around, where windmills go and where new wind farms are established. We really think that these two industries can coexist successfully here, and we here in New Bedford are committed to making that happen. So more to come on that for sure. That's a big topic of conversation, but we are prepared for that work. So in any event, Ben, thank you for this very timely report. We appreciate it, and we thank you so much for your leadership now and in the future.
Great.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll hear from a handful of other speakers. So we'll start with Paul Vigent, who's the managing director of the New Bedford Wind Energy Center. From there, we'll hear from Gideon Weissman, a policy analyst with Frontier Group and one of the authors of the report. And then I'm really pleased that we're joined today by representatives from the three companies that are vying to build the first offshore wind farm off the coast of Massachusetts. So we'll hear from each of them. Then finally, we'll wrap it up with Nicole, Morse, McLaughlin from the Marion Institute. So with that, I'll hand it over to Paul Vigent from the New Bedford Wind Energy Center.
Thanks, Ben. So for more than half a decade after the mayor created the New Bedford Wind Energy Center, one of the important roles that it has served is to spread the word, to get people aware of the resource that exists here so close to our shore. And it is a unique continental resource. So for a long time now, the New Bedford Wind Energy Center has been a mobilizing and catalyzing platform to organize the supply chain, to organize the workforce development pipeline, and to build community awareness about the order of magnitude of this wind opportunity for the city, for the Commonwealth, but truly for the whole nation. And I think I want to echo the mayor's remarks that New Bedford truly is at the epicenter of this emerging new industry sector. So congratulations to his team for having the foresight, to Matt and to Derek and Tony and Neil and the mayor, for really keeping their eye on that ball and doing everything they could possibly do politically, financially, and personally to position New Bedford to be where it is right now, which is at the epicenter and at the forefront of what is nothing less than a new base industry for the entire nation. Right? We're not talking about a new variety store here. We're talking about a new fundamental way of generating electric power that is proven technologically in Europe. It involves the construction of a new and more modern electric grid. And I think the most important thing for me, the most important take home are these two things. And what impressed me most about the report, Ben and Gideon, is that you help tell that story of order of magnitude, because this is a big, big, big deal, and it is still a sleeper. Nationally, it's a sleeper. The states are starting to get on the ball, and certainly the wind companies know the scale of opportunity. But this is a big deal. This is a big thing. And it's really just very encouraging that the fruits of their labor are now beginning to pay off. And 8 years ago, 9 years ago, when we first started looking at this stuff, and it was an interesting idea to bring back, it seemed like so far in the horizon, and it has been a long drum roll. But in about a month, companies will be selected to begin to generate wind energy from offshore, And the mayor, I think, captured it well in his recently published editorial, an op-ed piece, that when you fly out of Europe at night and you go over the North Sea, you just see a field of red lights, which are the beacons, the warning beacons on top of 3,700 windmills that are generating energy now for the Europe. They generate 13% of that continent's electricity to date, and that's going to double in 3 years. So in 3 years, imagine this, as when the mayor takes his next flight from Denmark or France or wherever, you'll see 7,000 windmills in Europe, in the North Sea. And at that time, we'll probably have 5. We'll probably still have max 5, but the other developers will be in process of harvesting this resource. So Ben, congratulations, getting a great report. It's about facts, and it's about telling the story that this is a big deal. So thank you for offering this opportunity to share that thought.
Thanks, Paul. So now we'll hear from Gideon Weissman, a policy analyst with Frontier Group and one of the authors of this report.
Thank you, Ben. So my name is Gideon Weissman, one of the authors of the report. I am a policy analyst with Frontier Group. Frontier Group provides information and ideas to help citizens build a cleaner, healthier, and more democratic America. For Massachusetts and the rest of the East Coast, looking to get off of fossil fuels, it's hard to imagine a more ideal clean energy resource than the winds that are blowing over the Atlantic. First, this is an immense clean energy resource right where we need it. We have some of the best offshore wind resources in the world right off our coast. The seafloor is shallow, the wind speeds are high. This is an ideal resource, and it's nearby some of our biggest centers of energy demand, our biggest cities all up and down the coast. Second, the offshore wind technology is ready to go. We actually have more than 4,000 turbines spinning off the coast of Europe now to date, I think. And offshore wind turbines today, they can produce more energy in less space and for less money than ever before. Finally, as we show in our report, Wind Power to Spare, this is a truly abundant source of energy. For the East Coast, which uses 1/4 of the nation's energy, offshore wind could supply electricity equivalent to 4 times our total electricity demand. For Massachusetts, our offshore wind potential could supply 20 times our electricity demand. For us to totally get off fossil fuels, we'll also have to replace the oil that we burn in our vehicles and the natural gas that we burn to heat our homes and businesses. Even if we electrify those systems with electric vehicles and electric heating systems, Massachusetts offshore wind could still supply 8 times our electricity. To solve our biggest environmental and public health challenges, Massachusetts and the East Coast need to dramatically cut our consumption of fossil fuels. To do that, we should rely on offshore wind. It's abundant, it's advanced, and it's right where we need it. Thanks, Ben.
So now we'll hear from the 3 offshore wind leaseholders in Massachusetts. So we'll start with Nate Mayo, the Manager of Policy and Development for Vineyard Wind.
Great, thanks, Ben, and a sincere thanks to Environment Massachusetts, the Frontier Group, New Bedford Wind Energy Center. This is why we're here, and Mayor Mitchell, I see myself echoing a lot of the comments that he mentioned. The report is timely because the technology is here. And then the report highlights that clearly, and also that the resource is here. So I checked the marine forecast just before walking in here, and it's blowing 25 knots on the outer continental shelf, and it's going to continue to do so. And it's up to us to capture that. This report comes for Vineyard Wind especially to highlight the urgency, both from the global issues of climate change, stabilization of energy costs across the region, diversifying, of course, our energy mix, but additionally to some of Mayor Mitchell's comments, capturing a new industry, bringing that to this region and solidifying it. I think that the economic growth potential for wind energy in the region is as vast as the outer continental shelf is. It's up to us as developers to be aggressive and ambitious, but to do this right. Vineyard Wind is poised to be the first scale commercial wind farm in the United States, 15 miles south of the Vineyard. That's going to bring power, clean power and renewable power to 400,000 homes. And we hope to break ground in 2019 and be operational in 2021. And that's not just a benefit for Vineyard Wind, that's a benefit for the region. Because as we solidify this industry and as we become the hub, it means clean energy quicker, it means clean energy jobs quicker. So I, for one, am very excited, and I commend advocacy groups like Environment Massachusetts play a huge role in this. We're the developers, the policymakers set the rules, and the advocacy groups really spur the interest and the urgency that we need. Thanks.
So now we'll hear from Barbara LeBlanc with Bay State Wind.
So I'm here for Lauren Berm, who couldn't be here. So apologize for reading. So on behalf of Ørsted, I want to thank the Environment Massachusetts Research and Policy Center, Mayor Jon Mitchell, the Frontier Group, the New Bedford Wind Energy Center, the Marion Institute, and our friends at Deepwater Wind and Vineyard Wind, excuse me, for the dedication to offshore wind energy. Particularly, we want to thank Environment Massachusetts for developing this really exciting report and highlighting the tremendous potential for Massachusetts, New England, and coastal Atlantic states when it comes to offshore wind energy. As the world leader in offshore wind farm development, starting with the first offshore wind project in the world in 1991 and completing 23 total projects worldwide, we've seen how offshore wind can supply regions not just with clean renewable energy, but with a new sense of purpose, fueled by the development of a new supply chain and new education and job opportunities. It's crucial that as we take advantage of all that offshore wind energy has to offer, we also use this time to build a robust supply chain that we can deliver the tools and materials needed to make Massachusetts the hub of offshore wind energy. The nation and region are watching what happens here in Massachusetts because it will shape this industry for years to come, and we're thrilled to be part of the journey. Ørsted is working diligently through our Bay State Wind project, a 50-50 partnership between Ørsted and Eversource. Bay State Wind aims to be the first and the largest commercial-scale offshore wind project in America, and it will also be home to the world's largest battery storage and offshore wind pairing, which we just announced. Our experience with building at scale will help Massachusetts reach the potential that is outlined in this report, and we are confident that we are the clear choice for Massachusetts. We have long been seen as leaders in Europe in this field, and we are genuinely excited for the great work that can be done in the United States, starting right here in Massachusetts and in New Bedford. As evidenced by the findings of the Environment Massachusetts report, the Commonwealth is truly the next frontier in offshore wind energy and can serve as a launching pad for projects along the Atlantic states. So thank you very much.
So next we'll hear from Matthew Morrissey, the Massachusetts Vice President for Deepwater Wind.
Well, hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Matthew Morrissey, the Massachusetts Vice President of Deepwater Wind, as Ben just mentioned. And I just first want to start by thanking Environment Massachusetts, Ben, and Gideon for all your good work in drafting such a very important and comprehensive report. I would also be remiss if I did not thank Rob Sargent from Environment America. About 25 years ago, Rob was my MassPER coordinator about 20 minutes down the road, and I thought he was old then. So please pass along my thanks to Rob for his leadership in public policy advocacy on offshore wind. Of course, Mayor Mitchell, our fellow competitive companies, the New Bedford Economic Development Council, New Bedford Wind Energy Center, and others in the region that have really put a local face on offshore wind over many, many years. Offshore wind is in fact here to stay. We are now a law in Massachusetts and are a law in other markets that, as Ben mentioned, are moving forward rapidly and even at larger scale than here in Massachusetts. There is a additional reality to why offshore wind plays such an important role in the overall diversification of our energy mix, and that is we are in the middle of a replacement cycle. We have to replace large fossil fuel-fired power plants with something else in many markets in America, and it's certainly true right here. We are already over-reliant on one particular technology, and that is natural gas. And the question becomes, for policymakers, what do you replace that with? What do you replace fossil fuel-fired plants that are going out of business for market reasons more than regulatory reasons as it relates to additional power? And offshore wind is the only real renewable energy source that can get to scale, so long as we continue to see the cost curve coming down, and we continue to ensure that we recognize that while offshore wind's benefits are global, certainly from an environmental and climate change mitigation standpoint, offshore wind is also uniquely local. It's a fundamental paradox of this industry. This is not software. Offshore wind has to be built in real places, and it has to be built in ways that touch impacted stakeholder groups such that they are not negatively impacted. And when we think about the overall promise that exists at scale in offshore wind, given the tremendous resource that exists off our coast, we also have to keep in mind the fact that there are other ocean users, and those other ocean users have reason to be unsure of a new technology. It's very human, but we as offshore wind developers have to play our role now that advocacy groups like Environment Massachusetts and Environment America and others, governments at the local level led by Mayor Mitchell, and at the state level have put in place laws. It's now industry's turn to actually make manifest the promises of offshore wind as it relates to building responsibly, building at scales that allow stakeholders to feel that they can be part of a process and not be overrun by macro scale or mega scale, and then also demonstrate that we can build projects at a more rational and commercial scale, yet at the same time that are extremely cost effective for ratepayers. So we have now an obligation on the part of industry to make good on the promises that we've made with advocacy groups, with governments right here in Massachusetts and beyond, to actually deliver on those promises. And it's only then that we are going to see the full unlocking of the tremendous potential that exists in offshore wind. Deepwater Wind is a fundamentally local company. Our headquarters are just 30 minutes down the road. We still opened up an office right here in New Bedford to be close to a very important stakeholder group to us, the commercial fishing industry. We heed the mayor's calls to ensure that the commercial industry is at the table as we're developing our projects. And we fundamentally believe that there is a real opportunity to develop projects that are scaled at a modest level that allows for incremental growth for this particular industry with commercial fishing and other stakeholders at the table. So with our Revolution Wind project that we've proposed, a 400 megawatt scale and a 200 megawatt scale, we look forward to working with all of the stakeholders in this city and in this region to bring forward a project at a reasonable scale that allows for real success and many projects to come in the future. So thank you.
So finally, we'll hear from Nicole, Morse, McLaughlin with the Marion Institute. And after Nicole wraps up, we're happy to take any questions for any of the speakers.
Thank you to Environment Massachusetts for inviting us here. I'm with the local nonprofit, the Marion Institute, and the program is South Coast Energy Challenge. We advocate for particularly low to moderate income households to have access to clean, renewable energy and also energy efficiency programs. So I'm not going to apologize for reading, but I am. This report put out by Environment Massachusetts makes us very optimistic. Optimistic because what it tells us is that residents are poised to benefit from offshore wind in multiple ways. First, residents will in the near future save money. Bringing offshore wind onto our grid will stabilize energy prices and reduce the risk of residents seeing spikes on their utility bills. Coal, oil, and gas prices can increase based on supply and demand. Wind is a free, reliable resource that blows day and night. According to the report, offshore wind is becoming cheaper and cheaper. This means the potential to lower residents' utility bills. Second, offshore wind energy will bring good-paying green jobs to the region and diversify our economy. Think whole supply chain for the industry, technical training facilities, and more hungry patrons visiting our local restaurants, keeping more money in our local economies. Third, residents will see improved air quality in their communities. This happens two ways. First, by replacing out coal, oil, and gas processing with a completely clean energy such as wind, we take harmful particulates out of the air. Also, once households have access to more affordable clean energy, it will usher in opportunities to switch out inefficient ways of heating our homes and powering our gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles. It has been well documented that electricity powered by wind will reduce asthma. It will cut down on sick days and wages lost. This again means more money left in our pockets and an improved quality of life for our residents. Fourth, offshore wind can help us meet the Massachusetts Global Warming Solutions Act to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by 2020 and 80% by 2050. Offshore wind is a viable tool to enable the transition to a 100% renewable energy-based economy. Switching to clean, renewable energy could eventually make us less vulnerable to natural disasters, saving lives and precious resources. Again, leaving more money in our pockets. We are grateful to visionary leadership on offshore wind in the region from Mayor Mitchell and his team. We need to hold more of our public servants accountable to do what is best for us. We are close to realizing a healthy, robust future where all our energy needs could be provided in a clean and affordable way. Thank you.
Great. So we'd be happy to take any questions, either for me or any of the other speakers.
Ben, what was the funding source for the study?
So we funded this study with support from several foundations, and they're listed in the front matter of the report, including Barr Foundation, the John Merck Fund, Mertz Gilmore Foundation, and the Sherman Foundation.
What's the projection for the future as far as the trend in reduction of prices for the cost of energy?
Yeah, well, let's see, Gideon, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I might have to
Yeah, come up here.
actually look at the report.
We didn't actually project the future price trend, but we looked at the huge reductions in cost in just recent years. And let's see. So according to data from Lazard, which looks at the levelized cost of energy, the price of offshore wind fell by 27% from 2012 to 2017. And then actually, Bloomberg New Energy Finance projects an even more rapid price decline, or they project a price decline of 71% by 2040 relative to today's prices. But there's been a whole lot of studies looking at how advances in offshore wind turbine technology, both floating turbines and fixed-base turbines, will drop dramatically in price while also being able to make more efficient use of ocean resources.
How much more efficient can you get?
Well, the offshore wind turbines, one of the biggest drivers of efficiency is size. So I know that one of the biggest turbines being developed now is 12 megawatts, which is double the capacity of the turbines built just a couple years ago off of Block Island. So the size of these turbines is growing really rapidly, and that'll bring down the cost of development a lot.
I've another one for Gideon. So when you talk about Massachusetts applying 8 times what it needs, even if we convert our cars and our heating, that's really interesting. But do you have an idea of how many turbines it would take at the current size of the turbines to actually do that?
I don't actually know the number of turbines, but I can try to get back to you. Yeah, it's based on the kind of the density of power production and the available areas for offshore wind development. I don't have a turbine number.
I was just kind of wondering what it would look like offshore. You know, would it seem like there's a huge number of turbines here, or would it, you know, would it not really be something that people would notice of?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing we wanted to make clear in the report is that we don't see a system where all of our energy is coming from offshore wind. Offshore wind has just a really big, important role to play alongside other clean energy sources like solar energy, and also there's big improvements we need to make with energy efficiency. So, you know, we're not saying that every inch of available offshore wind space would be filled with turbines, but it's just that there's a whole lot of potential for powering Massachusetts with clean energy.
Great. Any other questions?
You've answered all of them.
That's what I like to hear. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. Thanks again to the New Bedford Wind Energy Center, the New Bedford Economic Development Council, and Mayor Mitchell and his office for hosting us today. We will send out a copy of our press release and a link to the online version of the report after we wrap up, and obviously happy to answer any more questions. So thank you so much.